5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines full power, and liftoff.
I'm having such a good time.
I'm having a ball. Stop me now. Disk base remaining
Stop
for
me
recording.
now.
40 hours and 27 minutes.
I really hope we don't go for 40 hours.
Hey, we've been on a hiatus for so long. We might as well go do the 40-hour episode now.
What, it's been like 5 weeks.
It's been too long.
30 minutes times 5, it's 2.5 hours.
Well, buckle up.
I think we'll get kicked out before then. But
Yeah, the alarm just starts going off.
Or we just sleep here tonight. So, how was Ottawa? Or first, why were you in Ottawa?
Why was I in Ottawa? I was in Ottawa for my Spider Sat team that was participating in the Canadian Reduced Gravity Experiment. So we flew out on the 30th of July. We arrived at our Airbnb. There was 9 of us there, so it was quite busy. So we opted to just take it easy after a day of traveling. But we did need to open the Pelican case, which was like 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters. You know that it was a big Pelican case. You've seen it.
I'm actually curious. How'd you guys get it there?
So in our budget, we accounted for oversized and overweight. So that cost $105 per charge, so $210 to get it there.
And you just checked, like a checked bag?
Checked bag. Yep. So we had to put it in the oversized baggage at the airport, and their conveyor belt, we put it on the conveyor belt. We're like, it's not going to fit in the X-ray thing. And I kid you not, we had like maybe 3 millimeters of space between the top and the metal on the X-ray scanner. We were sweating a bit. It was pretty close, and we had a bunch of electromagnets and motors and all these wires, and we're like, they're totally gonna stop and ask what is in this. The lady just told us to put it on the conveyor belt, and we just went off on our merry way. We had this whole letter written from Mike, like saying who we are, what we're doing, why we're traveling with what we're traveling.
What's in it?
And we didn't need it at all.
That's good.
On the way there.
No, I can only imagine, like, they look in the X-ray and they just see pretty much everything that you could use to make a bomb.
Yeah, literally. Like, that's what I said before we left. I'm like, they're gonna be like, why are you bringing a bomb on the plane?
Yeah.
And you know what? It was fine. We got it there and mostly one piece, but when we opened the Airbnb, opened it up in the Airbnb, 2 of the components had broken. They were 3D printed components, and I think it was more mishandling by an unnamed airline that I will not drop. However, 2 of the components were broken, so we were scrambling, trying to come up with ideas how to fix it. So we started with tried super glue. I don't know if you know this fun fact, but water activates super glue.
Okay.
Yeah. I was telling everyone at the flight campaign, and they were like, what? And then I did it, and they're like, what? So, that's a fun fact for you. Didn't work so great on plastic. So the next thing, I'm like, does anyone have a pencil? I'm going to make a soldering iron out of this pencil. And I couldn't find a pencil. Otherwise,
or a
I would have.
battery big enough.
Well, we would have just plugged it in the wall. So after trying to put it back together with what we had, we ended up just seeing what was available for 3D printing in the area. And we arrived on a Sunday night, so nothing was open. And then I actually had some contacts in Ottawa that did miniature 3D printing for like Dungeons and Dragons or like Warhammer 40K. And I messaged one guy. He's like, here, I'll give you this guy's number. Texted that guy. He's like, I have a print on right now. I can give you this other guy's number. Got that guy's number. He emailed me probably half an hour later, asking for the files. So I sent him the files, and then I was like, oh, this is going to be expensive, ridiculously expensive. It was $21 for both of the parts.
So which parts broke?
So our experiment had electromagnets that needed to travel vertically up and down with the launch plates.
Mm-hmm.
So the electromagnet holders, which were 3D printed using PLA.
Oh, like the big cross thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's got like the 4 arms on it.
Yeah.
So one of them was completely borked. Excuse me. To the point where we couldn't do anything. It was like 2 of the pieces that held onto the rods had broken off, which it doesn't sound bad, but that was the worst part because it's such a thin layer line between, because we have a screw hole in the middle of it, so it just snapped right off, and there was no hope of getting it back on. And then the other one, the arms just broke off. So,
what was the infill?
it was 30%. It wasn't crazy,
Wasn't
but
crazy.
it was strong enough that it could withstand
Yeah.
proper handling. Considering that like 2 of the other ones were fine.
It sounds like we should have shaker table tested it for the airline and not the Falcon 20.
Yeah, no kidding. I like, yeah.
Okay, so you get the guy of a guy gives you a number, and you send him the files. He starts printing.
Yep.
And then what?
Yeah, he sends me a picture of them printing. He's like, should be ready by 1500 tomorrow. I'm like, sweet. We'll be there.
$21 later, your experiment's saved.
Yeah, pretty much saved. We still had a long week ahead of us of assembly and testing and making sure everything was the way we had tested it prior to leaving. But yeah, a DOM at Mobat 3D printing kind of saved our life. So, yeah. And then the next day we woke up, I think around 7 a.m., which was 5 a.m. Mountain Time. So it was a bit of a shock for some people. But I got up and ran, which felt nice. I don't usually do that. Would definitely recommend though.
The Ottawa air isn't polluted with all the BC wildfires. That's my excuse.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wake up, go for a run, and then day 1 with the Kenner GX crew, what was going on?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, we had to get the Pelican case there. So we load this thing up into the back of some guy's minivan, and he was like, what is in that box? So we had to explain to him, like, exactly what's happening and why we're going to a, NRC facility. And he was like, okay, cool. That's really awesome, actually. Drops us off. We get inside, and, there's a couple NRC people there. Pundeep was there already. He's like, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to sign in every day and sign out. So you get like a little visitor pass, put it on your belt or somewhere on you. You have to have it on all time, and it says escorted on it.
Mm.
So you have to be escorted with someone at all times. And then we go up to the conference room. We sit there for a little bit and wait till everyone's kind of settled in, and we do like a opening ceremonies kind of thing. So everyone from SEDS Canada introduces themselves. The NRC people introduce themselves. And it was really crazy seeing them in person for the first time. It's so intimidating doing the CDR, PDR. Like, these are very smart people. But when you actually get to know them, they're still smart people, but they're also people.
Yeah, I feel like that's most people I meet now. They very, very, very knowledgeable, but once you get past the outer shell, they're great people.
Goofy. They're goofy.
Very goofy people.
Yeah.
Okay. How many teams are there?
There was 4 teams. So one team brought 2 people. Another team brought 3 people. Another team brought 5 people. And then there's the 9 of us that were taking the end of the conference room table. So the key difference between our team and everyone else's team is that we had a business student. So we're giving Emily credit on that one for getting us all there. Yeah.
Okay. And what were the other, I heard something about an artificial heart.
Yeah. So the other teams were very focused on more fluids and life sciences. So UBC Rocket was doing it's like thermbolics or something like that, and it's like some heart medicine to help with blood clots.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was UBC Rocket. There was also
I googled that, and the only thing that comes up is pre-workout.
oh
So I don't. Maybe I'll look that up later.
yeah. Yeah, that's UBC Rocket. There was also Crisis from the University Concordia in, I think, Montreal. I'm not sure. Somewhere in Quebec. And their experiment was to come up with some data on how CPR works in microgravity, which was really cool. So they had a linear actuator with a tennis ball in the end, and then a CPR dummy with they put an artificial heart in it. And a simulated blood analog to get data, which was really cool.
Yeah, that's something like that's never crossed my mind before, like because I doubt that's ever happened on the ISS.
Well, I mean, there's obviously different techniques and stuff, but it's like which like there's a standard technique on Earth, but there's not a standard technique in space. So that's what they were trying to be like. Okay,
Right.
what is like what data can we get from this? I'm sure that they'll expand on it at some point.
I just think that like that research is going to be so valuable because, well, hopefully in my lifetime there will be some kind of commercialization of space to more public figures.
Exactly.
You're bound to need CPR at some time in the future.
Yeah.
And, I've never actually thought about that before. Like you throw them against a wall and.
Well, yeah.
Like, how do you mimic Earth-like conditions in space? No,
it's hard. You gotta have some kind of centrifuge, but you can't do that on a spaceship.
No. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then so you have the artificial heart, CPR, and then what was the third team?
So artificial heart was part of CPR.
Oh, okay.
Blood clot simulation was the first one. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Graviteam from the University of Calgary. What were they doing? They were looking at passive phase separation of some kind of solution.
Okay.
It was, like there's applications of like that in rocket fuel in space and stuff like that because you do get that phase separation. So they were just trying to analyze that using different capillary geometries and stuff.
Interesting.
I don't understand it. Good on them for doing that, but it is like when you're there all week, you're focused on your experiment and getting it working. So it's a little hard to pay attention to everyone.
So I did a research project last winter. It was based on high energy alloys, but I worked. One of my friends was doing one with the same prof on capillary inhibition of different fluids. And so what that basically means is if you have two different fluids that wet a surface, like have different wetting affinities, then if you were to have a Y branch in a capillary tube, you would see, like of different sizes, you would see one of the fluids favor one over the other based on how much they wet. And that sounds kind of like similar to what they were doing.
It does sound, yeah. I remember it was like a Y-shaped capillary. Yeah. I could see that in their CAD.
Very, very interesting stuff. Though very difficult to model because I was doing like all simulations and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And you would make like, I think I had 450,000 particles and it took 78 hours to run.
That's quite the simulation.
I did it on my laptop and I had to like say goodbye to my laptop for a week, middle of final season.
No.
So I could finish my like research on time. Okay. And then, so that's the three other teams, and then Spider Sat is there.
Yeah, so we developed gecko adhesive nets. So we made auxetic cuts in that. Basically, it's just like cuts in the net that help it deform in a way that it'll capture the debris when it's launching at a relative velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was an eventful week for us. The first day, we didn't have those 3D printed parts. Like I mentioned, we had to go pick those up later in the day. But other teams were also having issues, so we're like, okay, we're not the only ones right now that are struggling. So we ended up getting it all together pretty much for the most part that day. And then we integrated the nets again on top on Tuesday, and made sure that all of the fishing wire that pulls the plate down was tensioned right. We ended up doubling it up with 2 pieces of fishing line to strengthen it, which ended up working really well. It didn't stretch as easy, and it just worked well. And then we integrated the nets on top, and 2 of the other teams, so UBC, Rocket, and Graviteam ended up flying that day. We were originally planning to fly that day, but just because of how time got pushed back for the earlier teams, we ended up not flying. So we integrated the experiment onto the plane that night with the NRC folks, which was really cool. We got some good pictures of that. Yeah, so it's just bolted down on the aircraft. It's,
In the Pelican case.
Yeah, so it's in the Pelican case, and it's attached to a metal plate, which is then attached to the plane with bolts.
And was it in the same cab as you, or was it?
Yep.
It was.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can show you some of the photos after, and I don't know, maybe we can find a way to put those somewhere.
I'll get it done. Don't worry.
He's gonna get it done. Anyways, it's sitting right in front of me. Like, I reach out and I can grab it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the Pelican case has to be closed for the
For the entire flight.
Not the entire flight, but the entire time you're in microgravity, it has to be closed.
Like whenever you're in the parabolic sections.
So
okay.
yeah, like 2G, microgravity, 2G, and then level flight you can open it.
So at the level flight, like when you're accelerating up to that 340 knots, I think you were saying.
Yeah.
Free game to open up the Pelican case.
Yeah. So leading up to that 340 knots, you don't really want to be doing stuff. So you'll tell the pilots like, "Hey, we're good back here. You can go for like parabola." So they'll hang around at like 300 knots, like 280, just waiting for you to be ready. So, woke up Wednesday morning ready to fly. Got my flight suit on. I think we had a 9 o'clock brief.
I think it's like you looked exactly like Top Gun Tom Cruise in your flight suit. It blew me away.
A lot of people said that I looked like
with the aviators on,
Cruise.
identical.
I sent a picture of it to my friends, and they sent back a GIF of Tom Cruise, and I had to take a screenshot. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a striking resemblance.
Yeah, that's the first thing
wow.
I thought of when I saw you. I'm like, oh my, Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick.
All right, so flight suits are on, and this is the Wednesday,
morning. Yeah,
but this wasn't flight day.
Wednesday was flight day.
I thought this was the practice.
Sorry. So we had a shakedown flight.
Okay.
So that it's still technically a flight. We can still get data from it.
Okay.
But it's to shake down the experiment to make sure that we have everything that we need in place. They used to not do shakedown flights, but they do shakedown flights for all of their experiments. So they're like, well, we should do shakedown experiments or shakedown flights for the Ken RGX experiments.
All right.
So,
which is fair because, like, I imagine most, like, how do you test something that's supposed to work in zero gravity?
Right.
Before
exactly.
you're in zero gravity.
100%.
So I imagine a lot of student projects will actually fail on their first flight.
Yeah, because you don't see things coming. Like, obviously, the NRC and the SEDS and the Canadian Space Agency can, like, point you in the right direction, and if you're going in the wrong direction, they can just bumper you back onto the right course. But even them, they can't even see some stuff that might be coming, right? Like, something can blindside you and just get you out of nowhere. So during our shakedown flight, we had 2 acclimatization parabolas. So that's just getting used to the feeling of microgravity. So basically the plane starts flying. So it's like a normal takeoff. So you taxi to one of the runways in the Ottawa airport. You have to cross like this bridge, though. Like
on the Falcon 20?
On the Falcon 20. So there's like cars driving underneath, and you're just driving over on a plane. It's pretty cool. I know Boeing does that down in Seattle for bringing their aircrafts from the hangars that they're developing onto their actual runways, which is it was pretty cool to see it on a smaller scale for like the Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
So the Falcon is actually just like a business class jet, but it's been modified. So they have like modified oil systems, fuel systems, because when you fly in microgravity, you end up losing some of that oil. So they actually have to like keep the oil within a reservoir with a valve, so that you can only let a certain amount. Like they know how much oil they're going to use in a parabola, so they allow that into the canister, do the parabola, and then they can put more oil in, and then you're not losing like your entire tank of oil on that one. Then the other cool thing about the Falcon 20 is it has 2 different fuel tanks. So what they've been doing is they've been testing 2 different kind of fuel types on one go, and they can toggle between the 2, which is pretty cool. Normally you'd have to like aircrafts do often have multiple fuel tanks, but they don't have the ability to switch between the 2. So you can be like, engine 1's drawing from this fuel tank, engine 2's drawing from the other one, or you can be like engine 2, engine 1 are drawing from the same, and then you can switch back. So you can actually do different like fuel combinations and stuff and figure out what works best.
Interesting. And like, does that not cause like weight imbalance in the plane?
There will be some, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So your shakedown test happens, and
Yep.
what was the results?
So, well, let me first start by saying I love microgravity. I wish I could live in microgravity for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Let's start with that. How is it like being weightless?
Well, let's start with how does it feel to be under 2G? Because that's what you lead up to before getting into zero gravity.
Okay.
2G was so comfy. I got pulled down in that seat. It was so comfy.
Like a weighted blanket?
It was like a weighted blanket, and I'm like, this is wonderful. And then you look out the window, and you can see that plane flying up at like such a steep angle out through the clouds. One of the flight test engineers was like, we should have had another plane up here taking a photo of that. That would have been so cool, because we're flying up out of the clouds. But yeah, when you look outside, it's such a steep angle. Like,
wow,
it's crazy.
Okay. So yeah, just to get the kind of like the timeline, you're cruising, you get up to 340 knots.
Yep.
You then do the first dive.
It's a little dip, yeah.
Little dip, and then you do the first parabolic of the 2G.
Then they pull up, and then you get some 2G.
Right? They're climbing. They get to the top.
Yep.
And then they push down.
Yep.
And that's when you first experience weightlessness.
Yeah. Well, so first you start with negative gravity. So you get a bit like you go into like the negative like 0.1 range, but it's like enough that stuff can start lifting up. And then after they like correct themselves, they can get pretty close to zero gravity. Like, we had like a little display, and it said it was like 0.00 Gs.
Okay.
So I think it's down to the milli-G, which is pretty good for simulating in an aircraft, right?
Right. Okay. So that like the little negative G bump.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how could you describe it? Is it like the feeling when you go over the edge on a roller coaster?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. Yeah.
Okay, so you just get the
and
then you're floating.
And then you're floating. Rather than going back down, you're floating.
And like, I hear like, because a lot of people end up throwing up on these flights. Kind of what is like all your like intestines, like you feel them like lift up.
You do feel like you can't feel your organs, but you do feel that sense of weightlessness within your stomach. I personally didn't have any issue with it. They gave us like 2 sick bags each just in case. Not to flex, I didn't use any of them. So yeah, that was nice, and didn't end up throwing up. But yeah, you float there, and everything just feels right.
All right, and so what? 20 seconds of free fall?
Yeah, it's like 20 seconds of microgravity. Yeah,
and then
you're back down into 2G, and then they can either take the momentum from that and go back into another parabola, or they can terminate and go back into level flight.
Okay.
We never got to experience the back to. Oh no, we did. The acclimatizations were back to back, so it's 2G microgravity, 2G microgravity, 2G.
Okay. And then how many parabolas did you do?
So on the first flight, we did 2 acclimatization and 4 data parabolas. So the acclimatization ones where, you get used to it, make sure that you can actually operate your experiment while under the feeling of microgravity. And then the 4 data flights kind of gave us a lot of data in a different way than we were hoping. The debris dynamics ended up being completely different to the way we were expecting. And I think that's primarily due to the design of the launching mechanism. I think it stuck at some angles and launched it sideways. But even still, like the angle of the debris launching, it didn't seem right. So we also had an issue of the debris falling between the acrylic plate and the launch plate. So, we took that data from those 4 parabolas. And like, if you look back at the footage, like, I look pretty angry because I'm like, why couldn't this have just worked first try? But, I think it's a valuable lesson in research that it's never going to work first try. It's about learning and, bettering your experiment. So towards the end, I got a bit more of a smile on my face. But I was sweating. I was sweating hard toward the end. Like, I felt hot and sweaty, but I didn't feel nauseous at all. So it was a weird feeling.
All right. And then you guys land. And then what was the next step? Because there was some changes you had to make.
Yeah. So I guess I forgot to mention to everyone, including at the team wide, Lauren and I were both wearing an EKG and a blood ox monitor on our finger. So we had to get instrumented before we had to do like a pre-flight survey. And then when we got off the plane, the flight doctor, I guess, is not she's not a flight doctor. She's a researcher that's researching that kind of stuff. So she de-instruments us, gives us another questionnaire to fill out after the flight to make sure that we're doing okay. And then we went over back to the Falcon, offloaded the experiment, and we needed to make some big changes considering the 2 major flaws that we discovered in our experiment. So to address the wall and plate issue with debris slipping between it, we added bristles from a broom. So we went to Home Depot and we bought a composite push broom, and one of our team members, Spencer, ripped out all the bristles in each of their bundles, which was so tedious. He didn't even use pliers. He just ripped them out by hand, and now he's broom man. That's broom man. Yeah, so we ended up taping those to the edge of our launch plates to stop debris from falling through. And we took inspiration from, like, if you look, even at a golf cart, they use bristles to keep stuff from getting in where the pedals are. So that was kind of our inspiration, but on most aircraft, they also have those bristles on their throttles to stop debris from falling in. Mm-hmm. So we took inspiration from that, and it worked well from our initial ground testing. And then we also decided that we needed to move up the where the springs were sitting relative to the base of the experiment. So we ended up moving it probably 10 centimeters from the net, which was significantly closer than before. I think before it was probably like 33 centimeters. So
did you just add a bunch of spacers, or how did you shim that up?
So we were thinking, we asked if they had spacers. They're like, don't use spacers. We have these rubber aircraft clamps. So basically they got a piece of metal on the inside or on the outside, and then rubber on the inside, and basically works kind of like an O-ring. It clamps down really hard onto the rod, and it clamps it in place.
Okay. And so now it's fixed. It's now Thursday.
Yep. So yeah, Thursday now. We're prepping for the afternoon flight, and we get a tornado warning, so no more flight that day. But
Yeah.
we ended up all going out for dinner with all the other teams and SEDs and a couple of the NRC people, and I wrote my final there, so that was quite the experience. I think I did fairly well. So
That's good. I just thought it was so funny because me and Nick are in the project room. And he's like, "Oh wait, Connor has a final tonight. I should tell him and make sure he remembers." And me and you phone him, or me and him phone you. Sorry, dyslexic. And we're like, "Hey Connor, what's up? What are you doing tonight?" And you're like, "Oh, we're going drinking." I'm like, "Oh, you're going drinking? You don't have anything else to do?" You're like, No, we're just going out to the pub." And then Nick's like, "What about your final?" You're like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing that at the pub."
yeah, that was pretty funny. One of the pilots joined us, and he was like, "I've never seen someone in my 30 years of flying write a final in a pub." I'm like, "Well, there you go. That's a good story. You can tell for generations to come."
Okay, so you go Thursday night, wake up the next day, Friday morning, flight day.
Flight day, yeah. So prior to flight, we had closing kind of ceremonies. So basically, what we did was we presented like what we learned from over the course of CanRGX, and just thanked everyone for their involvement. And then SEDS actually did some nice awards for us. So we had a really strong outreach team this year to get us the outreach award. So we got an outreach excellence award, and then Grava team got overall excellence for their experiment. So that was pretty cool. We have a plaque now somewhere. Find somewhere to put that, which will be good. I'm tripping on my headphones. Yeah, so that finished up, and then the flight test engineer came down and was like, "Okay, like let's go for brief." We had loaded the experiment Thursday night prior to leaving, so it was all ready to go. We did a brief. We made some modifications to what was happening, and then we went, taxied, took off. First parabola, and the debris hits the net, which was honestly our success criteria after the last flight. So it felt really good to finally, see our experiment work after 10 months of hard work. So that was really rewarding. But between each parabola, we have to open the Pelican case to reset the debris. So we open up the Pelican case, but we have bolts holding the nets in place. So I have this Allen wrench in my pocket so that it doesn't start floating away in zero gravity. So I rip it open, pull the Allen wrench, unscrew, pass the screws off to the NRC guy. Lauren replaces the debris. I'm opening all the other chambers. It's like we were the fastest pit crew in the sky that day.
The first 0G pit crew.
Yeah, that's quite bragging rights. That's pretty solid there.
Okay. And I'm so happy that it actually worked for you guys. The video looks so good.
Yeah, I'm excited. So we're taking like a week hiatus just to chill, and then we can go and analyze the data as a group, and not that way everyone's included in that process. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, we got 10 parabolas of great data. We launched at various speeds throughout whatever I felt like inputting. I input. I have
that's the scientific method right there.
Yeah, well, it's like we have an alternative way to measure how fast our debris is going, so it doesn't really matter what speed you put in as long as you evenly distribute them across parabolas.
Mm-hmm.
But during one of the parabolas, I'm like, let's just not launch it. Let's just see what the microgravity or the negative gravity bump does. So you can go off how you're feeling. So when you start to lift off, I'm like, Lauren, disengage electromagnets, and then you can see the debris float up a lot slower. So we still need to analyze that and see if there's any adhering to the gecko adhesive nets there. But it was you learn on the fly. Like what you do, whatever feels right. Like you can talk about what you want to do on the ground, but when you're in the moment, you need to do what works best.
I was thinking a lot about like kind of scaling up your project to like something in space. And have you seen the videos of the guys skydiving without a parachute?
I have not.
So they're like, I don't know if I can find this, but there are videos of people skydiving like shirtless, nothing, just shorts.
Crazy.
And they land on a tiny little like net.
Oh yeah, I have seen that. Okay, yeah.
But it's when you're moving that fast, right? The net basically only deforms locally. So, like, everything on the outside doesn't even realize that it was like hit.
Yeah.
Only like locally where the skydiver lands do you end up with that like huge deformation, and then you slow it down. So you'd have something similar catching space debris with like your net. You'd have to make it like so big and like with enough elastic give, such that when debris hits it, it would locally deform but not like rip through it.
I think there's multiple ways we can go about adapting it for space applications. Like that was our initial intent, was to put it on a CubeSat and have it collect space debris over the course of its life, and then burn it up on reorbit. But we had some interest from some other organizations about using it for lunar regolith collection. So in a lunar orbit, you could use this gecko adhesive net, and because it's such fine dust particles, it captures it really well.
But okay, cool. Wow. But then how do you how
do you retrieve it? That's the engineering like hurdle that we have to come up with.
Have you seen what Calgary to Space is doing?
I have not. What are they doing?
So one of their payloads is a carbon fiber deployable.
Oh.
But basically like the structure, like you know how like a tape measure, you can like roll, like it can like coil up, but then when you stretch it out, it has like some rigidity to it.
Yeah.
It's something like that, to where when you deploy out this carbon fiber boom, if you would inflate it to be kind of like it's like a hexagonal structure.
Okay.
It will have structure to it, but it like coils onto just like a normal flywheel.
Oh, really? Wow.
So you can have like this huge deployable boom in like the size of a piece of electrical tape.
That's pretty cool.
But you could do something like that. Imagine you have like two of those.
And then deploy the geckos.
And you can like roll it up.
That would be pretty cool.
I am just spouting ideas here.
Yeah, I mean, anything is good right now. It's all, like, we haven't even analyzed the data yet, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's still up in the air, up in the 0 Gs.
I'm so happy for you guys. I'm so glad that worked.
Yeah, me too. It was a lot of hard work, and everyone worked their butts off that week.
Okay, and now it's Friday night. You guys are just enjoying the rest of the weekend?
Yeah, we were like, okay, let's take apart the experiment. We put it in our suitcases, left the Falcon case there, came back, and just hung out.
I didn't realize you guys put it in your suitcase.
Yeah. Like most of the stuff came back in my suitcase.
How was checking that bag?
It's fine. There was no issues at all.
Okay, that's good.
I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get pulled into a room, and they're gonna be like, why do you have these cases of motors and electromagnets? I'm like,
It's actually weird. Maybe I just like I have a sketchy look on my face or something. Every time I go through TSA, without fail, I get this separate screening.
I like in the big thing. Yeah, I always get that too.
No, but like they'll pull my bag aside. And
they'll do
like
that.
Everything. They'll swab it.
Wow.
I guess I just look sketchy or something.
You are a sketchy looking man.
I don't want to hear it.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, but with I don't think I could have gotten away with taking Canon RGX to Ottawa.
I'm just on the good boy list.
You want to know what really surprises me though? Like the UBC rocket team flies to competitions.
Yeah, I don't know how they do that.
Like with the rocket.
Yeah.
They don't ship the rocket, they put it in their suitcase.
Oh, so they take it apart and put it back together in pieces, or did they ship it as a rocket in the?
I think they ship
carry
it as two separate pieces.
Okay.
See, you know what I was telling Star they should do on the way to comp?
What?
They should mount it to the top of the van,
That would be pretty
like the
cool.
Pizza Planet truck.
That would be awesome. I would love that.
And then you get to test your aerodynamics on the road.
Exactly. That is awesome. They better be doing that.
Probably not.
Ah, that's lame.
But yes, what Star is right now, it's 20 days, 19 days away from competition.
You guys are getting close. How are we doing there?
Well, oh yeah, we haven't recorded in like 5 weeks.
It's been a while.
We did recovery testing. Did I ever show
yeah.
you the videos of that?
I did not see them, no.
So, like, just kind of like background. For a high-powered rocket, if most like 99.999% of the time, you're gonna recover with a parachute.
Right.
And the only way to really deploy that is with like a black powder charge.
Okay.
But like, you want to make sure that you don't want to test during your first flight. So you'll do that on the ground and you make sure that like the shear pins will disengage or shear. And then the two stages or two pieces will separate and that you'll have like the shock cord come out and it won't tangle. And so we did that testing and it worked very well. We had some issues initially though, because like everything was pretty much like a really tight friction fit. So tight to where when the charge went off, like nothing, it wasn't moving.
Oh, really?
So
you had to sand it down?
I had to sand everything down. And then we also had an issue where like exhaust was going through the back instead of like, basically because it's like this like sealed fiberglass tube.
Right.
You want it to like crack open like an egg. You don't want it to like go down the cracks and escape. So we had to add a more JB weld to some of the seams to like seal it completely.
Well, I guess my next question for you, are you guys sponsored by JB Weld?
I'm going to reach out.
You should.
We have like the amount of JB weld that's on that rocket. It's basically a JB stainless steel epoxy rocket.
You need a big sticker on the side. JB Weld.
We did get sponsored by Red Bull though.
That's pretty cool.
And so now we have nearly endless supply of Red Bull that I have been abusing
you're
so
not
thoroughly.
Sponsored. You're supported.
Supported. Sorry. Yeah, we're supported. And I've been abusing it. My heart is not loving me right now.
Well, I mean, drink all the battery acid you can, man.
Yeah, especially in my 20s.
Yep, there you go. Enjoy it while you can.
I can worry about my health when I'm in like older.
When I'm like in older. That's a motto to live by.
Hey, English.
Well, we're engineers.
Well, do you think this last week, like experiencing microgravity for the first time, does it make you more driven or less driven to become an astronaut?
More driven, 100%.
Yeah.
I am now thinking about becoming a test pilot for the Air Force. That's kind of the direction I want to head to help myself get towards my end goal of astronaut.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm planning on finishing my degree at the University of Alberta and then enlisting as a direct entry officer into the Royal Canadian Air Force and then getting some flight experience there. Hopefully go to test pilot school. I think that would be really awesome. Fly some experimental aircraft. But also still be interested and involved in like academics and research opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really pushed me in the right direction.
Oh, well, I'm glad you got a taste of the experience.
Me too. It was a kick in the pants that I really needed.
I'm glad.
It's truly a unique experience, and everyone really should get the chance to.
I really hope. Like, I don't know. I don't have any projects on the go that would lead me that way. Maybe I'll try CanR GX.
I think that Alberta Sat should continue CanR GX. I think it was, like, especially with a bunch of new members, like, people have experienced cubics before. They go through the design cycle. But on a short mission like that, you go through the entire design cycle, and you're such a closely knit team that you become pretty much a family by the end of it.
Yeah. And that is one thing with, like, it'll be different for cubics, but with that 5-year-long development cycle for X-Alta 2, like, that's over some people's degrees.
It is, yeah.
Some people never saw, like, the actual physical satellite. Because
most didn't.
Most people didn't. And so now that we're down to like a 2-year mission, it feels like it's going to be a lot more condensed, but everyone's going to be a lot more involved.
I really hope so.
And it's gonna develop our strengths a lot more as a team and bring us a lot closer.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's no longer a game of handoff. It's like, this is our satellite, right? It's not for the future people to finish. It's for us to finish.
Yes, we are on a time crunch and we got to get it done.
That's yeah. Well, 5-week hiatus, and we barely touched on what happened.
Yeah, we got a lot of longer episodes coming. We overshot. Well, not overshot, but I mean, 15 minutes above what we normally hit. So, welcome to the first 45-minute version of Blast Off Banter.
Maybe there'll be one next week. No, 100% next week. Maybe it'll be 45 minutes.
We'll shoot for what we can.
All right. Peace out, Space Cadets.
All right. Until next week, everyone.